Welcome to Admiral Navigator, the podcast that turns ERP complexity, AI potential, and operational risk into your competitive advantage by sharing the wins, the missteps, and the lessons that drive scalable growth. I'm your host, Dominick Zappia. Each month I sit down with mid-market leaders who face the same challenges you do and chart exactly how they move from uncertainty to measurable growth. This is your map from challenge to outcome. So let's navigate. But before we get started, let me ask you, have you been reluctant to move from Dynamics GP or SL to their cloud-based Dynamics 365 Business Central? Or maybe you're still relying on a legacy system and unsure about making a change. It's understandable. You might be facing concerns like high upfront costs, lengthy implementation timelines, business disruption, employee pushback, or maybe you simply feel there's no urgent need to change because your current system still works for now. Today you'll hear from Amit Nihalani, CFO at Vaswani, who faced those very same concerns and much more, but chose to make the switch, and he's glad he did. Let's chart the course from challenge to outcome. Hey Amit, how are you today?
Doing all right.
I appreciate your time this morning, taking time out from your day to talk to us. So Amit, before we get started, maybe you could just give me a little bit on Vaswani, a little bit on yourself, just to let the audience know who we're speaking with. So if you could just, in a couple of seconds, that'd be great.
Sure. So Vaswani is a provider of custom store fixtures to retailers, and what that means is that if you go into any department store in the mall or any like apparel store, a lot of the tables, shelves, and racks that you see that in the mall that display items are items that we make for our customers.
And your role there at the company, Amit?
So I'm the CFO. I've been at Vaswani for come up on 13 years now. And
how many years?
13 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how long we've been working together, I think.
Yeah. It's been a while.
So, Amit, I want to talk to you today about your conversion from GP to Business Central. And I guess one of my first questions is, even though GP is really not ending until 2029, I understand you want to give yourself time, but what was your decision to move forward with that migration at this point with Business Central?
Right, a couple of reasons. So one, I attended the Microsoft Summit conference a couple of years ago, and when I was there, a lot of the talk was eventually GP is going to be sunset, and they were encouraging a lot of people to switch over to BC. And that was one reason. The other reason is that I saw that Microsoft really wasn't investing in growing GP. It was kind of maintaining the status quo, but there were not any significant new features that were coming in place.
Right.
And on top of that, over the last couple of years, like the big word you keep on hearing is AI. And how will AI change finance or ERP systems or IT or accounting? And I definitely saw that if Microsoft was going to build any AI capabilities, they were going to do it in Business Central as opposed to GP.
Right.
And the last part, and this was not so much of a bigger deal, is that with GP, we were hosting it in our office. And that was fine, 15 years ago when we were all working in the office. But now our team is throughout the country and actually throughout the world. Half of our accounting team is actually in India now. So the idea of moving to a platform that was in the cloud also was appealing to us.
Right. So what was one of your biggest concerns or some of your concerns with that move? Obviously, you had reservations to an extent. You were going to do it, but you had some reservations. If you had any reservations, what would they have been?
Yeah, we'd been with GP. We had been in GP for 10 years. And so we were very comfortable with GP. We knew how it worked. We knew its limitations. We knew where it worked well. And yeah, everybody was comfortable with GP. And, there were about close to 15 people on our accounting team. And to get 15 people to do something different is definitely not something that I was excited to or sign up for.
Right.
In addition, coming to GP, doing a migration that we did 10 years ago, that was a really big deal. It took a ton of time, ton of resources, and I was not anxious to sign up for that again.
So I know we've been working together for at least 12, obviously for 12 years, because I
Right.
remember when you came, I don't know if you remember this, you came into my building, it was around Christmas time,
Sure.
12 years ago, the first time we met. And, you eventually moved forward with GP. So obviously we're glad you decided to use us for your Business Central implementation. But with regards to other products, I mean, it's always a time that people will look at other solutions,
Yeah.
whether it's NetSuite or Intact or whatever it may be. What did you go through that process of looking at other products? You just said I'm going with BC.
So I had looked at it briefly. One of the things that also made this appealing was the reduced cost that Microsoft was offering in order for us to move. So that was definitely a key factor. Basically, I think the amount that we paid in maintenance over 3 years, we could still pay our GP maintenance, but now we get Business Central on top of that. And so that made it appealing. But I did want to make sure I picked the right software for the business. And I looked at NetSuite 10 years ago, and I looked at it again today. And while NetSuite might have been able to do what we needed it to do, just the comfort that I had with working with Admiral and the financial incentives that Microsoft was offering definitely helped sway that. That's why I went with Business Central.
Right.
And the part about Admiral is that one of the things I learned is that whoever is doing the implementation, you definitely want to work with somebody who knows what they're doing. This is not the first time that they've done it, and I didn't have any prior experience with anyone at NetSuite. While we've had a relationship for 10 years with Admiral, which made it a lot easier to pick this
Right.
solution.
Yeah, because you were on the bridge to the cloud promo where you paid your maintenance for 3 years and you kept your GP maintenance, but they then gave you the equivalent in BC licensing.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I know when we started, we had recommended doing a process analysis because
Yeah.
over the years your processes have changed. How you may have set up GP at the time may not be the way BC needs to set up. So we went through that engagement.
Right.
And did you find that? I mean, did you find that valuable to do that before just jumping in and hoping we don't have a ton of gaps and things like that?
Right. I think it was helpful on a couple of reasons. One, it allowed Admiral to get reacquainted with the nuts and bolts of Vaswani and how we operate.
Right.
And so whoever you're picking with to do an implementation, this is time they're going to have to spend anyway understanding how you operate. And so let's do that on the front end. And as we explain all our processes, explain all the fields and the customizations that we've done in GP, because every company's got a little bit different way of operating. And so I just wanted everyone to get reacclimated with how we operate, and also ensure that before we pick this solution, there aren't any out of the box red flags about this is going to be an issue, or if there was an issue, we can then figure out what the solution is and maybe if it required a customization or not.
Did you find that the way GP was set up? Like, did you change your chart? Well, in GP you have that account and the sub account. In BC you have dimensions. So how did that all come together? Did you find the dimensions more valuable?
Yeah, and to get into a little of the nitty gritty, the AA codes, the analytical accounting codes that
Accounting.
we use in GP, it's kind of an overlay in GP. And what I mean by that, it's, you do all your transactions, and at a high level, you could put a sticker on it and classify which department or which project this was for. And it worked well, but it was not in the AA codes were not embedded in the general ledger, so to speak. So if you really got down to a granular level, you couldn't do that. You couldn't do really granular reporting with analytical accounting. Whereas with the dimensions in Business Central, every transaction, every entry, if you have one invoice that could cover 5 different projects, or 5 different dimensions, once you label those 5 different dimensions, when you're looking at the general journal, you can see all the granular detail on
Right.
a dimension level. And so it's a lot more powerful, in our opinion, than analytical accounting was
Right.
in
That's right.
GP.
I forgot you were using AA with GP.
Yeah.
So I could see where that would benefit. So, from the initiation of the project from a PM side, did you? I know Rini worked very closely on the
Yeah.
project with Jerry and Fadi. So how did I? I'm guessing that you would need someone from the client end to work in managing this project. Otherwise it's just not going to be successful, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I would say that overall, on a high level, I worked with you, I worked with Jerry, just to make sure that you understood what our requirements were. But both when I did the GP implementation and with the Business Central implementation, we tasked one person internally
Hmm.
to, this was their full-time job, was to not only ensure we understood Business Central, but we really got into the nitty-gritty of it. We were not just relying on Admiral to advise us on the best way to do things. We would spend every day making sales orders, testing out invoicing, testing out purchasing, creating items, making sure we understood how the reporting was going to translate. And so we had somebody that was constantly, and her name was Rini, studying Business Central and understanding its limitations, but also its capabilities.
Right.
Because Business Central is a much more powerful tool than GP is, which is great. But for example, what I learned is that GP may have one way of doing something, and that's the way we're used to. Business Central may offer you 5 different ways to do something. And those 5 different ways may not be similar to what you're doing in GP, but out of those 5 different ways, one of them could be far superior. And so you really need to take the time to look at different options on how Business Central works and
Right.
be willing to modify your own processes in order to start working with Business Central.
Yeah, because a lot of times what we find is clients who are going from GP to BC, they just want to take their GP processes and put them in BC. And we're like, what's the point? Now you're just going to have a cloud solution, but it's still going to be everything the way it was in GP. You're
Right.
not going to gain any, efficiency or be able to streamline any of the processes.
Correct. Yeah.
So, what was the biggest, like when you were making that move to BC from, there's always challenges, there's always
Sure.
bumps, and anyone who tells you otherwise isn't being truthful. But what what areas did we have some of those bumps or some of those gotchas a little bit?
One of the, I spent a lot of time, trying to make sure the reporting was going to be what we're used to or improved. I spent a lot of time making sure that some of our processes would be, we could transfer that from GP to Business Central. And one example I could say is that in GP, you can make one sales order and ship the items to 5 different locations from that one sales order. It'll create 5 different packing slips. In Business Central, one sales order can only go to one location. And so now instead of making one sales order, you have to make 5 individual sales orders. And, something like that was, an initial challenge. And we had to work through our process, and we worked through it just fine without any major customizations. But one thing I didn't anticipate that was going to be so challenging were the forms,
Hmm.
like the look and feel of our invoices, the look and feel of our packing slips and our vendor purchase orders. We had just over 10 years gotten used to the structure of a certain document, and our
Right.
vendors had gotten used to it, and our team in the warehouse has gotten used to it, and our customers have gotten used to it. And so trying to recreate the forms that outside parties are used to seeing from our company, that took more time than I was anticipating.
Right.
But
Right. So,
we got it done, but I wasn't anticipating it being taking or being as challenging as it was.
so did you take the forms from GP and just mirror them to BC, or you changed the form a little bit from how you previously had it?
Right. Initially, I wanted to use the forms out of the box in Business Central, and what I didn't realize is that over 10 years, we had made so many little tweaks in GP to make to add certain information there that I didn't think was necessary anymore, but it was.
Right. Right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
um, I didn't anticipate that all the different little feels and little pieces of information we had on our forms, they were there for a reason.
Right.
And we needed just to make sure that it was going to be there on go live, and
Right.
we got to where we needed it to be. but that was probably the more challenging part of this that I was not initially worried about forms, the
Right,
look and
right,
feel of a packing slip when I decided to move, implementations. But it's a one-time deal. Once you get it, you got it, and you're done. You don't have to worry about it. But I wasn't anticipating it. And the one thing I will say is that the forms and the look and feel in Business Central is much better than it is in GP.
right.
But you still have to maybe take the time to understand your forms, your packing slips, your vendor purchase invoices, and make sure you understand what information you need on there before you start, because that was a little bit challenging, and I didn't expect that to be a challenge at all.
Right, right. Well, BC, I mean, has a much more modern look and feel
Right,
than GP.
right.
And that's not a knock on GP. GP is a great product, but today it's just a different user experience with BC than it was with GP.
Sure, sure. It looks like it's from like the early 2000s, and
Right,
it
right,
is.
right. Now, are you utilizing, and I know you've only been on BC for what, 6 months to a year now,
Yeah,
or
yeah, 9 months now. We went
9 months?
live January 1st.
So are you starting to incorporate like the other productivity tools like pushing out to Excel or Teams or SharePoint? Are you starting to kind of take advantage of that integration with the other tools?
We have not. We're still, learning and growing within Business Central. We're
Right.
still, studying Power Automate, Power BI. We are, we've used it to replace, we used to use Bill.com, and
Right.
we've used Business Central to replace Bill.com on approval of transactions. Currently, we're trying to integrate with our bank so we can initiate payments directly from our Business Central directly to the bank. So there's a quite amount that we're still trying to optimize within Business Central.
Right.
But those other things that you mentioned are definitely on the horizon.
So when you were on GP, Amit, were you using Management Reporter for generating financials?
Yes, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we
So
were.
in BC, there's no Management Reporter. So are you now
Right.
doing all that reporting within the embedded financial reporting tool?
We are, and we're still trying to figure out the best way to do it. Initially we looked at using a third party
Right.
application, and while those third party applications worked, one, I felt the cost was a little bit high, and two, I wanted to spend more time and see what can Business Central do natively, and then I spent a bunch of time building Power BI reports and looked at that as a potential solution. But I've actually gone back now where I'm actually relying more on the in-house reporting within Business Central to get me what I need. And
Right.
this goes back to, we use dimensions to manage all of our projects, and in a given year, we can have 100 to 150 different projects. But what we learned was, since every transaction was identified on the general ledger with a dimension, we can extract and analyze that information really easily. So for what that means is that all I have to do is open up the general ledger, and I could see all the transactions, and I could filter it within Business Central how I want to filter it.
Right.
And I do a lot of reporting within Business Central itself now.
Were you doing the projects in analytical accounting before?
Yeah,
Okay, but it's a little more flexible with the dimensions.
yeah. Once you get used to it and you understand how it
Yeah,
works, it's definitely much more powerful of a tool.
it's a little confusing when you first try to explain dimensions, but once you're able to use it, you realize the benefit of it. Um,
Right. And like dimensions is simply a way to classify a transaction, and it could be classified by, a division if you have multiple divisions of a company, or by a project, which is where we use it. And it translates throughout the system from the
right,
sales side to the purchasing side to the inventory side. Everything could be linked with the dimension. And so that's why it's a pretty powerful tool for all your reporting needs.
right. Now, just going back to your comment on Bill.com, so you were using Bill.com not for the payment processing side, strictly for the automation. The invoice came in, it got
Yeah, it
captured through
really
OCR.
as a document management and invoice approval tool is what we're
Okay,
using Bill.com for, and that's something that's native to Business Central.
okay, okay. So when the invoices come in now, what's that look like within Business Central?
So right now, we still the majority of our invoices still get emailed to us, and when we do that, we have to manually still create a purchase invoice transactions in Business Central, but
Right.
it's really easy to then attach a copy of the vendor's invoice within the transaction in Business Central, and we then select who is the approver for this, and they receive an email letting them know that they need to open up Business Central and review and approve an invoice.
Okay.
And the invoice approval could be done right there on the screen in Business Central, and yeah, I mean, away we go. So
Right.
it's really a simple, easy tool to use, and keeping everything under one roof.
Right. Right. So because you started with Bill.com after COVID, you said because of everyone was remote and
Yeah,
it was
yeah. I
easier.
mean, like again, in the past, we were all 10 years ago, we were all working in an office together,
Right.
and if someone needed to approve something, we would print out an invoice and someone would physically sign it. And
Right.
during
Right.
COVID, when we were all working remote, we had to find a tool. And again, now that we've got our team is both throughout the U.S. and in India, it really helps to have a solution where we're fully electronic.
Right. Right. So from your process that you have in place today, what was one of the biggest improvements with BC you were able to really streamline?
Yeah,
Maybe it was very,
so
yeah.
just one simple tool that we've started using in Business Central, and maybe GP had the capabilities, but the user interface was not good. Right now, there's about a 12-hour delay in our warehouse from when something ships to, you know, we are able to create a shipping transaction in Business Central, and the next morning when everyone comes to work, they could see all the shipments that have gone out, and they can invoice immediately. And all the information stored within Business Central. Previously, we would have the paperwork gathered, scanned, and kept in these big boxes, and we would go through the boxes and then invoice
Hmm.
each day whatever had shipped. And now, again, with our team working remotely, it definitely helps that first thing in the morning, our team sees that all these items have gone out and need to be invoiced, and it's all there within Business Central. And so it just makes the whole thing much more streamlined. And not only that, anyone in our organization, between project managers and sales people, can log in and see did their shipments go out without having to call anybody or ask anybody.
Right. 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 So how have the users taken to Business Central as a whole? I mean, did
Right. It
how
was definitely an adjusting process. It was, one, we had one person, her name was Rini, learning Business Central, but then within each team, between the purchasing side, within the shipping side, within the sales invoicing side, we had people 6 months before we went live also learning the tool and the software, making recommendations. And so once we only started training maybe 6 weeks before we went live. And when we did that, we already had subject matter experts throughout the organization that were already familiar with the tool. And so everybody helped each other while we were doing our training and learning the system. And initially, it was definitely a challenge, getting everybody on board. But I will say this: once people saw the tool and got a little bit used to it, they didn't want to go back.
right. Right.
Once they got exposed to it, they saw the simplicity, the way simple things like copying and pasting is so easy between Excel and GP. Things just move so much quicker and much more efficiently that um, nobody wanted to go back.
Okay.
And
Okay, that's good.
but I'd say the first 2 to 3 weeks are, once you go live, are definitely a challenge,
Yeah.
because it's just the way nature of any implementation, whatever system it is.
Right. Right.
But no, our team was really open minded. They were really willing to learn, and the majority of them, once they learned it, they did not want to go back.
Okay. Yeah, because you just from experience, usually you'll get users saying, "Well, I used to do it this way in GP. Why do I have to do it this way in Business Central?"
And
They don't.
I'll give you
Yeah.
a great example. Like there's one lady. She works and one of her tasks is to reconcile our bank statements. And I was talking with her, and she said it goes much more quicker. From a day, it goes down to an hour. I said, "How does it? How are you able to reconcile things so quickly?" She said, "Because of Copilot."
Yep.
I don't even know what that means. That's so cool that Microsoft is thinking about using tools like Copilot to help with matching transactions and doing it in a very simple, easy way that non-technical people are able to leverage the if you call it AI or not, leverage just the analytical tools to make their jobs go quicker.
Yeah, because Copilot's built right into BC, and you don't even need to get a Copilot license
Right.
to utilize it. So we actually had a webinar. I think Rini attended a couple of days ago on some of the capabilities within BC with Copilot. So from the standpoint of the overall implementation, is there anything you would have done differently than what after it was done? You say, I should have did this way.
Um, I'm not sure because I think the only thing I would have said I would have had a much more open mind. Initially, I felt GP worked really well for us, and I did not want to sacrifice anything that was working well. But this was a tribute to Rini, is that she said, "Okay, BC does not do it this way. Let me figure out how BC wants to do it."
Right.
And by doing that, for most of our processes, we found that BC is actually superior. So you really just need to have an open mind and don't be closed and don't get stuck. Well, GP did it that way. GP was one of the things is for example, in GP, if somebody opened up a transaction, nobody else could open up that transaction.
Right.
And at first we said, "Oh no, this transaction is open and Business Central lets multiple people open it at the same time." And we said, "We don't want that." "Well, why don't you want that?" "Because GP was like that." "Well, isn't this easier now? You could have multiple people open a transaction and not have one person having to wait." And GP's smart enough to know, hey, someone's already in the transaction, only one person can edit it, but let multiple people see what's happening.
Right.
And so even things we thought we didn't want, once we learned about it, we're happy we have it now.
Right. Now, and one of the things I get from a lot of clients is, I love my smart list. And in BC, there's, theoretically you can do what you did with smart list, but the user experience may not be the same. So how did you, because you were a heavy relier on smart list.
Heavy relier on smart lists. I would say that was one of my biggest hesitations. The amount of times that I looked, I Googled, does smart lists exist in BC? And they say, well, it does, but it doesn't. Microsoft has these lists, which are pretty powerful. And I think they're continuously getting better. And these lists are similar to the smart lists, but I felt the smart lists allowed you to, add more fields to look at information in a different way. And my solution there was to use a solution called it's called PopDoc from E1, which basically brought the entire smart list functionality into Business Central and more. And so that's what we're using. But what I've found is I would probably say 90% of the smart lists that we had in GP, we still have it in Business Central. And for that next 10%, this additional tool that we've purchased, which is fully integrated within Business Central, PopDoc, it works just fine. And another reason why I like PopDoc is that it also allows you to do more than any smart list could. And so you can build a lot of logic within your smart lists that you can get more customized information out of it. And it is going to be an adjustment. It was an adjustment, but about 90% of what I wanted, I already had in Business Central, and for that extra 10%, we got the additional tool.
Right. So I think, and speaking with Ben, you deployed a lot of the Power BI reports that are inherent within BC, because it comes with, I don't know, 50, 100, whatever Power BI reports.
We did, and I'll say it's great that they finally put these standard reports in there. And And I think what we're going to look at is try to see how we can get those customized. And I think just recently the source code was released. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
we're talking with our Power BI developer about possibly, um, you know, trying to create some customized reports for us because all the reports are great, but every time anyone's going to see a report, they're going to ask, "Can you add this? Can you add that?" And
Exactly.
so I'm really glad that Microsoft is opening up the system to allow a little bit more customization of those Power BI reports.
Right. Right. So obviously we kind of drill down on the financials of GP, but you're using it for order management. Obviously, you mentioned sales orders, purchasing,
Yeah.
inventory management. Um, Now, what other functions are you using besides the reporting and the financials? Any other? Because you're not necessarily doing heavy manufacturing, right?
No, no. So we do what I'll call light assembly,
Right.
and so what that means is that we don't our company we don't fabricate anything from we don't take raw wood or raw steel and fabricate
Right.
it, but we will get different components and assemble it. And that's what we're using. We're using that functionality in Business Central for light manufacturing and assembly.
So, are you using it as a bill of material functionality as
Yes,
well?
yes, yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
we have bill of materials that consolidate up to a master part number, and then we do assemble it in the system.
Okay. Okay. So, with regards to advice, if for clients who are considering doing this, what would you recommend, or what would your biggest takeaway would be, or advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, you want to work with people that have a really good reputation and who know the system. One of the things that I really appreciate about Admiral is you're not just focusing on the technology and say, look at how great the technology is. And you also take the time to understand the customer's processes. And you also have a good grasp of accounting as well.
Hmm.
And if you do, yeah, you need all three of those. You need to be able to understand how a company operates. You have to have a solid background in accounting, and then the technology can be used, but you don't want to get lost in the technology and negate your processes and proper accounting. And
Right.
so you definitely want to work with a provider that can provide all these three things. The other part of it is that another reason why I liked working with Admiral is just you guys. I'm not your first customer. You guys have been doing this for a long time. Have worked with many customers. You've seen it all, and that definitely helps working with an experienced partner.
I
That
appreciate it.
yeah that and the last part I'll say is that you guys know GP. You've been there for many years deploying GP, and you also know Business Central, and so having the expertise of knowing both systems was also a big plus.
Right, right. No, I appreciate that. I remember you saying our project manager on the job was Jerry, and you said he's the only person I pay to yell at me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. That's true. But he cares. He has a tremendous passion for this, and he really wants the customer and the project to succeed, and he's not afraid to push back on the customer when we're asking for something he doesn't think we need.
Mhm.
Um, at the same time, he's also internally a great advocate for us and making sure that other resources are line up. And the other person that was key to this was Jerry was managing the project, but also Fadi, who was
Right,
really in the nitty gritty nuts and bolts, and he would listen to all of our challenges that we were having and always try to figure out a solution. And
right,
so
right.
I think they made a great team. And that's the thing. I don't think any one person can do it all.
Of course.
While Jerry really understands high level how systems work and how customers work, you also need someone that has the expertise of the nuts and bolts into technology and understand how it works. And when you combine those two, along with good resources from the customer, or good I guess champions internally for the customer, that really I think is the key to a winning combination for a successful implementation.
Right, right. So, what's next on the phase two and phase three? I mean, I know you spoke about the bank feed. Um,
Yeah.
I know we had spoken briefly about maybe, well, you're doing the AP workflow automation, but maybe eventually doing the scanning of it, I guess, or
Yeah, I would love to get to a place where, and I've looked at many different tools. I haven't been able to select one, but is there a tool that can take all our purchase invoices and scan them and create the records immediately in Business Central and have it
Mhm.
reviewed by somebody? I'm sure that there are a number of products that are out there, but everybody feels that their situation's unique, and so I'm still looking for that solution, as well as I really want more Power BI dashboard reporting, and so now that the source code is open, I want to maybe look at potential solutions there. And the other thing I would say is that one of the things that I get excited about Business Central is that there's such a huge community and there's a ton of resources and attention being paid to Business Central. And so one of the great things about I've enjoyed doing is going to these different conferences, either the local ones or national ones, where you get to meet other GP users. You get to meet, the third party vendors that are building add-ons to the software and learning and
right.
trying to find out what is the best way to do things. And we've met some great people at these conferences, and so there's just a tremendous community out there
hmm
where people are passionate about the product. There are many podcasts that I listen to
Right.
while I'm working out of different Business Central podcasts and learning what are other people using and what are other and even what is Microsoft thinking? Where are they going to go next? I've just enjoyed getting to be part of this community, and I'm looking forward to as I continue to participate, seeing what other things are out there that we should consider using.
That's good info, Amit. Amit, a couple other questions I forgot to ask you.
Sure.
What when you did the data migration, did you bring all the data over, or you just because I know that was a discussion to have.
We brought the historical general ledger transactions, but we didn't actually bring any of the records. And what I mean by that is that we brought all our debits and credits that went in and out for the past couple of years, but it's just there in the general ledger of Business Central. You can't actually open up those transactions and see the detail of what was on that particular invoice.
Right.
But we have all that. We brought over all the debit and credits for the past couple of years.
Okay. So you didn't bring over like detailed AP, detailed AR, and
No, just
yeah, you just
whatever
brought
was
up
live and
in the
outstanding.
ledger. Right. And you brought obviously the master data inventory and such.
Yeah,
Um, One other question. In your you have a warehouse there, right?
we have
That
several.
you
Yes.
several, right? So you're not doing any barcoding right now though, right? And scanning and
No, no.
okay. 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 So Amit, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And
You're
again,
welcome.
I appreciate your business as I always say. And thanks again for the time today, Amit.
Great. Thanks so much, Dominic.
Take
Really
care.
appreciated it.
Bye bye. I really appreciated the time with Amit today and sharing his experience with his migration to Business Central. So whether you're a CFO working to eliminate blind spots or a CFO building for flexibility, the lesson's clear. Complexity is navigable with the right partner. If this sparked an idea or gave you a new way to lead through change, please subscribe and share it with your team. For more frameworks and guidance, visit admiral-usa.com. Until next time, keep navigating forward with confidence.